Yo, Zenith Nation, welcome back to Catch The Zenith, the podcast where I document my journey to get better in life and business. Today we've got another episode of Zenith Reflections where I comment on some of my most interesting posts from the week on X, formerly known as Twitter. And by the way, if you're new here to this podcast, I'm Nicola. I'm currently building an AI startup while also writing my master thesis in startup entrepreneurship. So let's jump right into the first post. It's much easier to say he has changed and he sucks now rather than saying I didn't change and I suck. This is a quote by Alex Hormozi and I really love it. And I will explain why in a second. This quote is originally from the recent podcast episode he recorded together with the guy from the School of Greatness. Really interesting episode. You can look it up on the School of Greatness podcast. Now, let me explain this quote. What I observed is that when you start to improve your life, you maybe start reading self-help books, self-development books, etc., non-fiction stuff. You try to become a better human being, whether it's in the domain of health, wealth, or relationships, whatever. There are always people looking at you and thinking you have changed in a certain way. And that's obviously if you try to improve you, that also means you change. But some people, they say that in a bad way, like the people who don't know what to say, the people who don't know how to say you have grown, say you have changed. And they say it's like a bad thing. And this is really, in some cases, pretty much true. Like they think change is a bad thing. But especially if you believe you have changed for the better, those words are sometimes not really helpful. And it's really, at least for me, it was important to understand that, hey, I've grown. I've changed, but for the better, and thus I've grown. And it's and it's a simple framework how to deal with people who tell you have changed, and they tell you that in a negative way or in a negative sense. And the simple response when somebody tells you have changed is to tell them that's right and you haven't. And this is a little bit more practical when it comes to how to answer to them. And obviously that's just something I learned from Hormozi, which I found pretty helpful. Yeah, when people tell you stuff like that. Quite frankly, in my case, it didn't happen that much. But whenever that happens, somebody tells me something like that, I'm prepared. So I really love that. Change doesn't mean necessarily something bad, actually the opposite. And quite frankly, it would be pretty much boring if we stay exactly the same. Like if somebody didn't change and is still doing the same mistakes over and over again, ultimately they haven't done much about their life to improve their life ultimately. And yeah, and that's totally fine. Whatever works for you, but then don't tell other people who try to work on themselves and improve their life that they have changed and that is bad. That's like kind of a bad thing. No, it's actually a good thing, and be proud on those people. Or it's inspiring, yeah, and you can learn something from them perhaps. So yeah, to wrap this up, change. If somebody's telling you you have changed, tell them, yeah, that's right, and you haven't. Obviously, if that's true, of course. Next one. There's no greater waste of time than justifying your actions to people who have a life you don't want. Again, a quote by Alex Hormozi, and this builds up on the previous post about change, because, you know, when there are people telling you you have changed and stuff like that, sometimes those folks are also people who are not really having the same goals in life as you do or you have. And when you then start to arguing why the way you live your life is the right way, etc., so that uses a lot of energy, and those folks are sometimes not really receptive to that kind of stuff, especially if you, as mentioned before, you learn, you try to improve, you learn about habits, health, and so on. And quite frankly, that's totally fine. And I realized that if somebody's there who has a life, like is living a life that I don't want to live, like maybe they are obese, maybe they only talk about problems rather than opportunities, or they are in general have a pretty negative attitude, they are whatever divorced, they are pretty short-term oriented. They are maybe partying a lot and sleeping around. Those are all indicators, like for me, that, okay, this person is living a different life, and that's okay, but the advice this person gives to me or is really not really... I want to listen to people who are there where I want to be. Because they have done already the things that are necessary to achieve at that destination. And circling back to what I said, like when we then start to argue why the things we are doing is the right things to people who have a different path in life, that doesn't really make sense because they can't really understand through what you're going through. But I give you a specific example, like if you have, like in my case, okay, long-term wise, I want to be a successful entrepreneur. And if somebody is telling me advice or stuff who are not a successful entrepreneur or they haven't built successful businesses yet, then they don't know really pretty much a lot about it. Maybe they have observed other people and that's fine. And maybe you can learn something. You can still listen to those folks. But always I try to be careful what I let into my life, which advice I will implement. Because I want to listen to people like, for instance, a Hormozy who have done it. They have built multiple successful businesses and they have helped a lot of other people do the same. And there is actually, let me quickly look that up, there's a really helpful hierarchy that can navigate or help us to whom we should listen to in our lives. And again, this is of Hormozy. And it starts with the least relevant and ends with the most relevant of people you want to listen to. Yeah. So first, the people who are really not relevant to listen to are strangers on the internet, obviously, when it comes to advice. Then, that was number 6. Then number 5 is people who know you, who haven't done what you want to do, or know anybody who's done what you want to do. 4th is people who observe people who have done what you want to do in close proximity. 3 is people who actually have done what you want to do. 2nd, people who help many people go from where you are to where you want to go. And number 1 is people who have both been there themselves, like in Hormozy, for instance, he has built multiple businesses and helped other people like you get to where you want to go. He has helped thousands of people scale or grow their businesses. So it's really a helpful framework to conceptualize or operationalize to whom exactly I should listen to. And obviously strangers on the internet are not a pretty good source in most cases for that purpose. Now, and also another interesting thing I believe is when somebody imposes their expectations of life on your life, or they tell you some advice, the how you want to process that. And I have like a 3-step process I try to do it, which is the first thing is to do, I ask myself, is this person who's right now giving me advice having the life I ultimately want to have? If the answer is yes, and that leads me to the second step, I listen and try to learn as much as possible. Like if, for instance, a successful entrepreneur is giving me advice, I really want to understand everything. I ask follow-up questions. I'm really paying attention. But, and that's the 3rd step, basically, if not, I also listen and try to learn. So if somebody's not having the life I want to have, I still try to listen and learn. However, in my head, I discard most of the advice directly because it would harm my progress. And let me quickly share a story with you. When I was in Salt Lake City, I had a conversation with a cool guy. So nothing bad about that guy. However, he had at that point a different way of living, a different mindset, which is totally fine. But the thing here is, we were driving back to my apartment, and we had like a event and company event, and he asked me or proposed like, hey, is it really worth to sacrifice so much like you are doing, like working so much? Is it really worth it working so much all the time? And maybe you can enjoy also a little bit, because he was a little bit more enjoying in sense of like maybe going out, partying or meeting people. And I was at that period in my life and to a certain degree still am, pretty focused on just my internship and the business I was running next to that, which took a lot of time. So I was basically working every single hour of the day, except working out. So I was working, hitting the gym, sleeping. That's more or less it. And obviously commuting to work. And if I had listened to him at that point, that would have meant that I needed to say no to my business, or more no to my business, and yes, things that doesn't really help me to achieve my goals. And the goals were like, be successful in business. And yeah, at that time it would have harmed my progress, and thus I discarded his advice, or his, let's say, proposal, what I could change. But I still was listening and try to really understand and think about it for a moment, but then realizing, okay, this person doesn't really have the life I want to have. I want to be working hard. I want to do meaningful things with meaningful people and enjoying and going out. Fair point. Maybe there is another time in my life where I can do more of that. But at that point, I was pretty much focused just on that, and that's totally okay. So it's simply a helpful framework for me. Ask myself, is this person having the life I want to have? In both cases, I listen and try to understand, but in the case of this person has a different life, I'm more careful if I take something on, and in most cases, I quite frankly discard the advice. I hope that helps. So now circling back to the quote I said, justifying your actions to people who have a different life than you have is a pretty waste of time, and quite frankly, it takes a lot of energy. And I'm doing that fewer and fewer times because it's just not worth it, Or, I'm always asking when I'm getting into an argument, okay, now and what? What is now the result of that? So I don't see it as that productive, justifying the actions like that. Next one. If you give yourself 30 days to clean your home, it will take you 30 days. But if you give yourself 3 hours, it will take 3 hours. The same applies to your goals, ambitions, and potential. A quote by Elon Musk, which I really love. I guess you know Elon Musk, the richest man on earth currently, running, 6 multi-billion-dollar businesses, crazy. And I really love this quote because the underlying law behind this quote is Parkinson's law. For those of you who don't know Parkinson's law, this simply means that tasks will take as much time as you allow for them. So setting tighter deadlines can help you work more efficiently. In other words, the more time you have, the longer it takes to accomplish something. And I realized that, I learned that initially, from Ali Abdaal. And it made me realize that deadlines are a pretty good thing. Because I remember back in the day when I was at university, I had some days where I had just time for university. And I had other days where I would work out, because I work out 5 times a week. And on those days where I work out 5 times per week, I had, let's say, a healthy deadline in place that I knew, okay, I have maybe 10 or 12 hours time for university, and then I'm going to work out. And that added a little bit of pressure. Or another thing is, a recent example is when I'm commuting by train from one location to another, maybe an hour or something like that. I love it really because I have 60 minutes of deep work and I have a deadline, which is the end of the commute of the train ride. So, and sometimes setting yourself a little bit more aggressive deadlines can really, really boost the productivity in the moment, your focus, your ambition. And I try to set myself always a little bit more aggressive, not always, but in most cases, a little bit more aggressive deadlines, because it helps me to kick my brain into gear, basically. And especially when it comes to larger projects, to break them down into milestones. Like I have this kind of milestone, like back in the day with my previous business, it was, okay, I want to hit this amount of revenue per month, or I want to accomplish this and this and this. So I break larger projects down into steps. And it really helped me because it makes the overall, like chunking down a big task obviously really helps to know that you are making progress and that it is not so overwhelming anymore. I remember when I created, for instance, a lead magnet. A lead magnet is basically like more or less a free version of your main offer that solves a pretty narrow problem of the customer. In my case, it was I helped for 7 days for free ADHDers to overcome procrastination, or to make as much progress in 7 days as humanly possible on a procrastinated project. And they had free access to my entire coaching program, the normal paid program, and they already, like a free trial, let's put it like that. And that built a trust, and then they qualified for my main offer, which was a paid program, 8 weeks long or 10 weeks respectively. But the point being, this lead magnet took quite a lot of time, and also when I created the main offer, obviously. But what I did was a long list of different things I need to do. I guess there were 30 items or something like that, from creating the landing pages, the copy for the landing pages, to, on the other side, creating the course material, the structure of the program, etc. So, and yeah, basic chunking it down was really, really helpful. Now, circling back to Parkinson's law, how can you apply that? It's pretty simple. Instead of saying, okay, I will take 6 hours for this particular task, try to do it in 4 and see if you can accomplish the task or finish the task in the same amount of time with the same quality. And if you observe that, okay, actually the quality decreased a little bit, but I got it done, maybe you can give yourself a little bit more time. And it's like always challenging yourself. A great way to do that is, by the way, you can buy a timer, set the timer, let's say for 90 minutes, and see, like, whenever you have a task at hand, you think like, how long does that take me? If it's 60 minutes, you give it a turn, this timer. Especially have those lock timer, you know, those Amazon timers which you can buy, you can turn them. You turn it 60 minutes and then you challenge yourself. Or you can do it with your iPhone, but I don't recommend that because, again, this is a danger zone for distraction. All right, so that's Parkinson's law. I hope that helps. Hey, Zenith Nation, quick break. Each Sunday, I write a free newsletter called Zenith Sunday. In it, I share simple lessons I learn about doing better work and living a better life. It's short, easy to read, and costs nothing. If you'd like a little boost each week, sign up below. And now, back to the show. Next one, and this is a really powerful, that was one of the main learnings from last week as well, or from this week basically. I'm recording it today on Monday, so I mean last week. That is a learning by Chris Williamson from a podcast about, or the main learning was there, what is actually monothinking. Let me quickly read what I learned there, or it's more or less a transcript. So what is monothinking? Monothinking, you can tell how shallow of a thinker somebody is by, first off, how predictable all of their perspectives are if you only know one thing that they believe. And secondly, how many different incidents they explain with the same phenomenon. So if I know your perspective on gun control, I can accurately predict your perspective on abortion, immigration, the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, and everything related to global politics. If that's true, you are not a serious thinker because all you've done is to put this onesie on that says, oh, that's exactly my worldview. All you've done is put this onesie on that says, oh, that's actually my worldview. Yeah, they will correlate together. People will tend to lean left or right, or lean right, and a good amount of that is genetically predisposed. The other thing is, if everything is because of climate change, or everything is because of capitalism, or everything is because of Donald Trump, you're also not a serious thinker because the demand for answers outstrips your supply for them. So you just retrofit the one answer that you have for one thing across absolutely everything else. But for someone to ask themselves the question, okay, so why do I believe that? Like, why do I think that thing? You don't need to do that. You've already done the the show of loyalty. You've got acceptance from your own side. And this is why it's so rare to find people that sort of move back and forth, left to right. Most people pay an unbelievably high price by doing that, because if you're all the way to the right, at least you guarantee agreement from one side. Or if you're all the way to the left, you guarantee agreement from one side. But if you're in the middle, you guarantee disagreement from almost all of both. Ultimately, that's a much harder path. All right. So why I really love this text. It was a little bit longer, but I think it's really powerful. So if you know something about another person, one piece of information about their beliefs, and based on that belief, you can derive all the other beliefs this person has. Chris Williamson makes the point that, this person is not really a great thinker, because you haven't really thought about it. You just took the easy path and said, okay, I believe this, and other people who also believe this, they also believe this X, Y, Z, Y. You get the gist. And the other thing he explains is that if you blame like one single phenomenon or one single thing for everything, that is also not the path to go. Because it's pretty easy to blame something for everything. But actually asking yourself, why do I believe certain thing is really hard. But I believe, and that's something I learned from Sam Ovens, the entrepreneur, founder of school.com, that making your own analysis is so powerful. Like asking yourself, this social event, does that really make sense for me? Or am I only there to be there for the sake of being there? And asking more times why. Why am I doing that? Does that make sense to my life? Does that align with my values? I think is really, really powerful, and ultimately like more helping you to live more up to your values and not doing simply stuff for the sake of doing them, if that makes any sense. So I really love that. To understand what is monothinking, that you just have you believe one thing, and because of that, or if somebody believes one thing, then you know everything about that person. That's not really a great thinker. Yeah, I really love that. By the way, if you want to listen to this, where I got that from, it's an episode from the Iced Coffee Hour podcast together with Chris Williamson. If you search for Iced Coffee Hour and Chris Williamson, you will find the episode. Really, really powerful. Highly can recommend that. Next one. This is a post, again, X post, which I published. Books I finished reading this year so far. Number 1, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, which I reread. Second, $100 Million Leads by Alex Hormozi, which I also reread. And the last, and the book that I'm currently reading is The Rational Optimist by Matt Ridley, which is a new read. I haven't read that before. So quick, my take on those books. So the first one, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, I reread. I believe one of the most powerful books I've ever read. So Viktor Frankl explains his experience in the concentration camp during the Nazi time, and two things, and he explains basically how he found meaning in this suffering, basically. How he basically could make it happen to survive the concentration camp. And it's a really, really, it's can't put in word how incredible this book is. And he first explains his experience in the concentration camp, and later he extrapolates the learnings into like a school of psychology. That's put really, really simply, obviously, but that's more or less the structure of the book. First experience, then the school he came up with of psychology. And what I got pretty much two takeaways from this book, which I'm applying to my life. The first one is that you can always choose your response to a stimuli. So whenever there's something happening in your life, you can make an active decision how you want to react that. Like, for instance, somebody is in a bad mood, and you could also be now in a bad mood, but you decide, no, I will not let myself to get also in a bad mood because I'm thinking for myself. I'm a positive person, for instance. So you choose your reaction to be positive in that moment, or keep a positive attitude. The second learning, so this is like you choose your reaction, and the second learning is that no matter how bad you feel, always remain decent and respectful. Why did I learn that? So when Viktor Frankl was released from the concentration camp, he was walking with another guy on like in some, I don't know the word in, let me quickly look up this word. Yeah, basically on a field from a farmer. I guess it was like that. And his like friend, he started to destroy the field a little bit. And Viktor Frankl, and I'm hugely paraphrasing, like said something like, hey, why you are doing that? Only because other people harmed you now for this long period. That doesn't justify to now harm other people, you know? And I found that really, really powerful, because now extrapolated to my life, this means no matter how bad I feel or how, let's say, unfair life is, I can always maintain a positive, respectful, decent attitude, or be respectful towards other people. It doesn't give me the right, if I haven't slept that much, to be disrespectful to other people. Yeah, and that was the learning I got. And I'm really grateful that Viktor Frankl shared all his experience in this book, and that we obviously don't need to go through those atrocities to actually learn that. So really grateful for that. Second book was $100 Million Leads by Alex Hormozi. It's a business book about how to make people interested in the stuff you sell. And he outlines there like a blueprint how to make it pretty, yeah, to increase the likelihood to always have pouring in leads, more or less. Or that's the gist of it. And he has like a framework he calls the Core 4, how to get leads, how you as an entrepreneur can get leads. This is through warm outreach, like you contact people who you know. Cold outreach, you contact people who don't know you, one-on-one. Then you can post content to add value to other people's life. And the fourth one is paid advertising, like ads. And then in the second part of the book, he also talks about the lead getters that are doing the Core 4, which I just explained on behalf of you. Those are employees, agencies, referrals, and affiliates. And yeah, it's a great book when it simply comes to how to generate leads. I reread it. I watched the video course, which is for free online. You can also listen to his books for free, the audio version, for instance. So highly recommend that. Great book. And now, right now, I'm reading Rational Optimist, book by Matt Ridley, because it was recommended by Naval Ravikant and some other folks, which I really pretty much respect a lot. And this book's, I'm now pretty in the beginning, like page 30 or something, makes the point that, like, we feel sometimes that we are way worse than decades ago. Like, we think we are in a pretty bad state right at the moment. At least this is what the news tries to suggest us in many ways. But the Rational Optimist shows you by facts and real stats, basically, that this isn't the case. Like, we are in so many ways, whether it's through technology, etc. In so many places, we are better off. Like, we have electricity, we earn more, shelter-wise. In so many different regards, we are better off. And yeah, this is, I would say, where I'm right now, what I'm reading. I don't know what will come after this first chapter, but I will maybe keep you posted if there's something interesting to share. So The Rational Optimist by Matt Ridley is what I'm reading right now. So next post. Loneliness is a tax you have to pay by or is a tax you have to pay to atone for a certain complexity of mind. Let me repeat that. Loneliness is a tax you have to pay to atone for a certain complexity of mind, a quote by Alain de Botton. I found this quote, I guess in Chris Williamson's newsletter perhaps. And why I think it's so powerful is fewer people are like you if you start reading and thinking about complex topics. Your peer group shrinks, and this can make life feel quite lonely. And this is not like complaining about it, not at all. It's just a rational observation, basically. Like when I got into this whole self-help or started reading non-fiction books, how to improve my life, etc., you start to think about ideas and start to change your life. And not a lot of people on this planet are actually doing that. Like there are way more people who are just living life, and and that's okay, there are not that many people who actively like do a lot of self-improvement stuff. And the more you get into that world and learn about concepts, the smaller your peer group gets and the people who can understand you. And that was just an interesting observation. And it's just good to know. But the cool thing is then obviously if you have people around you who are like-minded and also try to work on themselves and improve their life through self-development, etc., there can be really cool conversations. And that was just an observation. Next one. How to lower your dopamine baseline. First, take your Sunday and 24 hours, no stimulation. So no social media, junk food, music, etc. You're only allowed to go for a walk or go many walks, drink water, and read. Then on Monday you work. And do this once a week or every second week to get back to like a low level of a good dopamine baseline that is not that high. Why I'm bringing that up? So I think dopamine overstimulation is definitely true. I have had experience in the past, especially when I was 18, 19. And something which is quite interesting that over the past 6 years, I have lowered my, let's say, I'm not anymore overstimulated because I try to change a lot of things, like whether it's eating a healthy diet, a lot of veggies, good proteins, complex carbs, or taking cold showers, working out, consuming a lot of long-form content, which is not that dopamine, doesn't boost your dopamine that strongly, up. It really helped me. So to live a more focused life. And the cool thing is then when you have like a lower threshold or a lower baseline of dopamine, it doesn't need that much to get stimulation from something. Like when you then start working, you really enjoy it because it's quite stimulating. However, if you are used to those crazy stimulation getting from social media, junk food, etc., and then you want to work, and you think like, this is so boring. And making like a dopamine fast or detox or social media detox, whatever, sometimes really powerful. In my case, I just try to live in general a really, let's say, a deep life where I try to cut off a lot of stimulation. And I'm not saying I'm perfect with that, but stuff like doing one thing at a time, consuming long-form content like reading books or podcasts, working out, eating healthy, all that kind of stuff really helped me, I would say, on my journey. And this framework or those steps I just outlined can maybe be a good starting point. Or in my case, if I get off track, it's a good way how to find my way back to, let's say, low dopamine baseline life. Next one, I really love. That's a business one, business post. Is a guy called I Am Aaron Will, posted that on his X, and I reposted that. There is written, $500 client. I just feel as though with this investment I am about to make in you that we should understand how our lives are about to change, and I need results, and you need to bring them. I am entrusting you with our livelihood and lives. And then on the flip side, you have a $50,000 client, and he says simply, money sent, thanks. Now, why I really love this post. I remember when I started with my second business where I helped people with ADHD to become more productive. In the beginning, like, there were many clients who were not that financially qualified. They didn't have that much money, which obviously makes sense. A lot of ADHDers struggle with economic success, whether because they are procrastinating or struggle with time management. And however, when I had other clients who were high earners, but they had ADHD, but they were already on a high performing level, I call them high performer ADHDers. I had some of them, like, I remember one guy in particular, we had our sales call, and he simply said, like, just send me a payment link, I will pay. And he paid immediately. And I thought, like, wow, this is so cool. And I got this client through a referral, actually. A former client of mine who was really, really happy with my coaching program, he referred me him. And that was one of the experiences I never forget. And I realized that, okay, people who have spent more money on stuff, or if you have a high ticket like program you sell or offer, and you sell to people to rich people, it's so much easier. It's way more convenient, not so complicated, because the relative amount of that investment is not that big, like, because they have way more money. But if somebody spends, let's say, if a rich person spends $1,000 on something, as opposed to a person who's pretty poor and spends $1,000 and who has maybe in total 10,000, that's a whole different ballpark, I would say. And I really love that. And this taught me this lesson that, sell to the rich, they pay better, is, especially when you're starting out, pretty helpful. And obviously, as you then become profitable, etc., you can broaden your, if that's what you want, I think, broaden your who you want to serve. But this comes only after, I would say, being a long time in business, then you can think more about that kind of stuff. It's like similar like with Tesla. If you think, they started with a pretty expensive model they sold, like only for the rich. And they sold that. Then they opened their, let's say, Tesla delivered another model which was a little bit cheaper, than another one which was even more cheap. So more and more, they had like this pyramid. They started at the top with the most expensive, and they worked their way down with cheaper and cheaper models and make it more available for people who have less money, basically. And then ultimately helping everybody. But you start at the top to get the revenue going, and then you work your way down. And I saw that with many other companies as well, who did it similarly. Next one. That's a post by Dan Coe. The 2 hours you spend scrolling each day, or 730 hours each year actually, could have produced a book, a business, or a body you don't currently have. This is just a quick reminder that if you spend 2 hours a day on meaningless doom scrolling on social media, you could have taken that time for 1 year straight and get a big project done in your life. Next one. There are way easier places to work, but nobody ever changed the world on 40 hours a week. Quote by Elon Musk. And this just resets the standards. If you want to accomplish big things, then you need to work big. It's pretty darn simple. A lot help to do a lot helps in some cases a lot. And it's just a quick reminder that, okay, small work leads to small successes or small results. I'm not saying that there are exceptions and a lot of caveats. However, I would say at least this work definitely in my case to work more, because especially when you're starting out, you don't have that much skills. So you need to work a lot to pay down your ignorance debt. And once you have the skills, you can maybe dial a little bit back or reduce the amount of work, because you got smarter and now you know how to work smart. Because people say work smart, not hard, but I believe you need to first work hard in order to work smart. Because you need to learn the skills. And then once you have the skills, you can think about working smart. It's actually in every business like that. You start, put in a lot of work, and after a certain period, you start to create systems like SOPs, standing operating procedures, lists of things you're doing over and over again. So you become more systematic about the stuff and work smarter, obviously. Next one. If you're having a hard time in your life, this is for you. Who thought it would be easy? No, I don't think so. Who thought it's gonna be hard? Yeah, definitely agree. Guys, this is what hard feels like. Get used to it. Again, something I learned from Hormoz and Chris Williamson. I really love that, because sometimes, like, if I'm going through a hard period in my life, like giving an example from the past, when I got into my master's program, I had like a business and master's program. I worked all the time. And it's just a helpful framework to go through, like to ask yourself, did you really, did you think it will be easy? And then you realize, no, I don't think so. Running a business and doing university successful will not be easy. But on the flip side, do you think that it's going to be hard? Yeah, quite frankly, yes. So just to reset the standards, this is what hard feels like. So get used to it. Just a quick reminder. This will not last forever, but right now, this is exactly what hard feels like, and most likely it will never get harder. Yeah. Just a really helpful framework whenever you're going through a hard period. Next one. The good shit sticks. Let me quickly read a post by Tim Ferriss, the author of The 4-Hour Workweek. He wrote, Carl Fussman once asked Harry Crews, novelist and author of A Feast of Snakes and Car, how he could remember anything, given how much booze and drugs he consumed. Harry kept no diary. His response was, boy, the good shit sticks. This was what Carl recalled decades later, when he lost an entire box of research notes in his basement. They'd been soaked by a randstorm and the pages turned black. Carl's ultimate piece, written from memory and titled Drinking at 1,300 Feet, is incredibly, it won a James Beard Award, which is akin to an Oscar in the food world. One of the starting lines in the piece is, we all know the feeling of wanting to do something so well and so badly that we try too hard and can't do it at all. Now, why I love this quote is because sometimes we think there are people out there, podcasters, they remember all those fancy quotes and frameworks and mental models and tips, whatever it might be. But this strategy that Tim Ferriss suggests or talks about is the good shit sticks. When you are reading something or listening to a podcast, there may be, after listening to it, maybe one piece of advice that really stuck with you. Like, whoa, this is it. And that's exactly the thing you should remember. And obviously, if you listen to a lot of things, you have more and more like those one-off things, like one thing that you remember. And that starts to increase exponentially if you have a lot of exposure to stuff. That's what I realized on my podcasting journey. Like when I got into podcasting 2020, April, March, I was totally at the beginning of this journey. I didn't know that much. Like, what is Parkinson's law? What is the Feynman technique? Anki card, spaced repetition? What is that? And then over periods, this really started to accumulate and compound this knowledge. All of a sudden, I had certain quotes in my head that I could use in podcasts. I learned them by heart, or I understood them because they were so impactful in my life. So it's actually not really a thing learning by heart. It's more like if you think about an idea, this really stays with you. Like, for instance, when Alex Hormozi talks about this is what hard feels like. this is so powerful. And then and beneath, like below this quote, are then so many things, so many ideas that go along with that. So I really love that. Whenever you think, oh, I need to remember everything, no, it's just something, maybe one piece of advice that is really, really powerful from a 2-hour conversation. And that's exactly what you should focus on. And that brings me to the last post of today, which is what to take care of when choosing a partner. So you might remember before I talked about what is monothinking. This is exactly from the same conversation Chris Williamson had together with the Iced Coffee Hour guys. Let me quickly read that, and maybe that's something for you to think about. That's going to be one of the best things I think that everybody should look for in a partner. And this is pretty much universal. It's something called psychological stability. It's pretty self-explanatory, but the best way to gauge it, it's kind of hard to do. The best way to gauge it is after you've had a disagreement or an emotional perturbance of some kind. How long does it take from them to get back to baseline? Just to get back to normal. So like he basically means when there is like something going on in your life that's pretty hard or negative, how long does it take you to get back to normal? And let's continue. If it takes them a day and a half, that's not someone that's particularly psychologically stable, because things are going to continue to happen. You can't stop the psychological perversion coming in. You can't just deal with them more quickly. Like if there's an incident, something happens, you're late for a flight or something like that, and that's the rest of the holiday completely wrecked because this person simply can't get over it. That is going to be a very difficult relationship. Psychological stability is not only something that you should select in other people, but it's also something that you should aim to cultivate in yourself. It's going to make you a better partner. It's going to make you a more attractive partner. It's going to actually improve your own life as well. It's like the most altruistic, selfish thing that you can do to make yourself better and enjoy your experience of life. It's also going to help make you better as well. But yeah, when it comes to choosing a partner, you have to choose carefully. So the main gist of this is basically that working on psychological stability yourself is pretty powerful. You become more resilient. But this is also something to pay attention on when you get into a relationship, and not only into a romantic relationship, but also when you choose, for instance, a friend or a business partner, to pay attention on that. Like, hey, if there's something they're upset about, how long does it take them to get back to normal? All right. And that's it for this week, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Try to make the best to, distill some of the most interesting things I learned from the week. And I hope you got some value out of it. I wish you a beautiful week. Bye, guys.